Okay, we're on Nun Gimel Amid Beis. In the middle of talking about the way a person is machzik in a karka, but we're not talking about the chazaka that we've been talking about from the beginning of Cheskes Habatim, where a person proves that he bought something by showing that he lived on it for 3 years, he used it for 3 years, and that's a proof that he bought it and not that he was just a squatter. Well, now we're talking about is someone who actually buys something, but then he has to make a kinyan. So one of the way you can be kind of karka is with kashav shtar and chazaka. So talking about that chazaka, a chazaka that is the ritual by which you gain possession of a piece of karka. It's not a dispute, but the question is, did you actually come into possession of the karka?
Where are we up to?
We're on Nun Gimel Amid Beis. And like we just said, we're talking about the chazaka now of where a person is being kind of something with chazaka, not where he's bringing a raya of chazaka. So we're up to Amr of Nachman, Amr of Baravua, about 11 lines from the top. Amr of Nachman, Amr of Baravua, Shnei Batim, Zelifnim Mizeh. If you have two houses, one is inside of the other, meaning that in order to access the outside, the person...
Where are we? Sorry, where are we?
Nun Gimel Amid Beis, 11 lines from the top. We're continuing. Another question in the question of how a person makes a chazaka we've been talking about how you can make a chazaka in one karka, in one sod, and there's another sod separated with a border in between them. That was the previous Gemara. So continue on the same theme of whether when someone makes a chazaka, cheskes kinyan, not a cheskes raya like we've been talking about, but a cheskes kinyan. So that we have another question on this. Amr of Nachman, Amr of Avu. Shnei Batim, Zelef Nemizeh. You have two houses, which is really like two apartments. You know, we've all been to the old city. One bias is not separated from the other bias with a lawn and a driveway. It means have two rooms, one behind the other, and the only way to access the outside, the mavli or the chatzar, is for the person in the inner house going through the outer house. Hipzik bechitzen, and someone made a chazaka in the outer house, meaning the chazaka of kinyan. He made a deal to, let's say, or it was either it was hefker or he made a deal to purchase it, liknoisa, and he made a chazaka in the outside one to be kainit. Kanu, he's kainit. Liknois oisev esapnimi, but if he says with that chazaka I wanted not just be kind of the outside one, I also want to be kind of the inside one. Chitzon kana pnimi loy kana. He's only kind of the one that he made the kinyan in, the chazakin. Meaning, let's say he fixed the door or nol gado parts, one of the ways of improving the property. But he's not kind of the inside one, because the person on the outside has no excuse, no reason to use the inside house. He has direct access to the outside, so he has no business going inside. That's someone else's property. However, likness is a pnimi. If he's kind of the pnimi, and I'm sorry, I'll continue. And if this person who made a chazaka in the outside, and he says, I only want to use it, not I want to be kind of the outside as well as the inside, but he says, I only want with this chazaka to be kind of the inside. He's not kind of anything, because he's making chazaka in one thing that is unrelated to what he's saying, I want to be kind of. So you did nothing. The inside one, you didn't make a chazak on it, and you have no relationship. This outside house has no relationship with the inside house, and you didn't intend to make on the outside house, so therefore that doesn't work. However, the other way around, and this is really very analogous to the previous Gemara. Hichzik bepnimi l'knaisai, if he was machzik in the inner one, and he had in mind to be kainit, he's kainit. Likna oisev esachitzen kanish name. In that case, it'll work on both of them. Now, what's the difference? Why, if he's machzik in the outside one, he doesn't get a kinyan on the inside if he intends to do so? But if he's machzik in the inside one, he intends to be kind of both of them. He is kind of the outside, because every person who has rights in the inside house, it comes along with it an easement where he's allowed to travel through the outside house. It's the only way for him to get out. So they are very intimately connected. since the outside has a connection with the inside, he can be machzik in one, and that chazaka will work for both of the properties. However, likness is a chitzin, if he's if he makes a chazaka on the inside, and he has in mind, I want to be kind of the outside house, to say that I'm making chazaka here and I want to be kind of just the other one, that can't work. The only reason why you have rights in the outside one is because if you're kind of the inside one, that goes with it, that brings along with it a right to go through the outside house. But if you're just trying to be kind of the outside house by making chazaka in the inside house, but not be kind of the inside, then you have no rights in the outside house either. Amr Rav Nachman, Amr Rav Bar Avua. Did I skip? No.
No.
Yeah. Amr Rav Nachman, Amr Rav Avua. Haboyne palterin gedolim b'nichsei ager. Someone who wants to be kind of nichsei ager is a way of saying something that's in hefker, a plot of land that belonged to a ger. The ger was nifter; he has no yarshim, so it's hefker. And this person built a large palace on the property of the ger. Uba acher v'hamed lahen dalsis. And then a second party comes after the first one came and built the palace, and all he did was he put in the doors. Kana. The one who put in the doors is kind of. My time, what's the reason? You have to, what we've said, this chazaka of null god of aparats is when you improve the land. You have to not just improve the land that you make it better theoretically. You have to conclude, you have to make a complete improvement in the land. It's not just that you made it worth more, that just needs a door. You have to, whatever it is you're doing, you have to complete it. So, if someone builds a palace but it doesn't have the doors, it's not a complete house. So you haven't yet made a chazaka until you complete it. And the last guy, even though it seems very unfair, all he did was put on a door. He spent 5 minutes putting on a door. This guy spent a year putting up a palace. It's still, the second one is the one who's kind of. The first one, Livni Ba'alma Huda'apich, he was just playing with bricks. He just set up bricks, but they're not yet into a house. Amrav Dimi Bar Yosef, Amrav Yosef, Rebbe Loza. Hamoitze paltul and b'nichsei hager. Someone who found a nichsei hager, meaning a hefker piece of land, and already has a fully built palace in it, and he wants to make a chazak in it. The sod behen suad echad, he plastered one wall with a layer of plaster, a kier echad, or he put on it one, he put on, let's say, one figure, one engraving. He made one decoration on it. Kanan, he's kaina. The kama, how much of a plastering or how much of a figure of a decoration does he have to do? Rav Yosef Amma. Rav Yosef says all he has to do is one Amma. Rav Chizda ukneged haPesach. However, it can't be that he did an Amma in the attic. It has to be opposite the entrance that it's nicker. That's enough to make a chazak. Rav Amram, Hein Milsa Amagon Reb Sheshes. This was a member that we heard from Reb Sheshes, and he proved it to us from a brisa. Hamatzia matzois b'nichsei hager. If someone spread out mats on the property of a ger, kana, he's kaina. So there's a machlokes rishonim. The Rashbam understands this to mean if someone put out a mat and he lie down on the mat, so he's being nena directly from this karka. So that itself is a chazaka. I mean, this is a different kinyan, different type of chazaka than we've been talking about before. It's the same chazaka, but a different way of making a chazaka. This is not like null gado parrots or plastering or doing some type of tikkun. This is if someone is nena directly from karka, that also could be a chazaka. So it doesn't mean being nana that you improved the value and it belongs to you, you got something out of it. It means a direct physical hana. I'm going to bring a raya for this from a Mishnah. The other Rishonim say that it's talking about the same kind of hana. It's talking about he installed the mat and that improved the land. But that will be more problematic with the raya from the Mishnah, from the Brisa. That's why I think the Rashbam said his pshat that we're talking about a different chazak. So where do you see this in a brisa? Mahi, where is it from? The Tanya. How do you have a chazaka to be kaina a kinyan in a karka. No loy menaloi. So this is talking about by an evet. An evet is daimit to karka. So how do you make a kinyan chazaka in evet? No loy menaloi. If the evet put on his shoe, or he hit the loy menaloi, or he untied his shoe, or he shahayla kelev achav lebeis hamerchatz, or he brought his kelim to him to the bathhouse. So if shitai, he undressed him, verchitza, and he washed him. Sacha, he smeared on him. Garda, he scraped him, which was a way that they would serve a master. Belvishai, he dressed him. Venilai, and he put on his shoes. Even though we already said before, now we're talking about the sequence of someone, all the different things that a slave does when he brings his master to the Beis HaMerchatz. Vigviyai, and he picked him up. Kana, he's kind. The Shpam says, we're going to explain in the middle what higbiyai means. Amr of Shimon, loitei chazaka g'doyle mehagba. Shagba kind of b'chol makom. If you could always be kind with hagba, so chazaka is a less direct form of kinyan. Hagba is the ultimate kinyan. If you remember back from where was it? Is either I don't remember if it was Kedushin or in back in Bava Kama. We said that the basic way of being kind of something is by picking it up. So he says, Rav Shimon says that if you could be kind of with chazaka, you can certainly be kind of by picking it. So Maika Amar. So Gemara, this last machalikas needs explanation. The Gemara Hachi Kamar. Higbiyai l'Rabbi kana. If the Eved picked up the rabbi, he's kind. Higbiyai Rabbi I'm sorry. Higbiyai l'Rabbi. If he picked up his rabbi, he's kind. Because that's a way of serving his rabbi. He's picking him up to carry him to the streets. Higbiyai Rabbi loikana. But if his rabbi picked him up, the rabbi is not kind of. So that's what Rav Shimon said back. Rav Shimon loitei chazak g'doyle mehagba. How could you say that if the rabbi picks him up, even though it's certainly not a way for the rabbi to get service from the Eved, but it's a hagba. Shagba kind of b'chol makom. Shagba is always kind of. So that's a machlokes. That's the explanation of the machlokes in that brisa. But what comes out from this is l'kuli alma. If the Eved picks up the rabbi, that's kind of. So we're saying that's a raya to what we said, at least the way the Rashbam said it, that if he has hana directly from the karka by lying down on a mat on the karka, that's a chazaka. So it's the same thing over here. We're seeing that if the rabbi has hana from the fact that the Eved picks him up, that's also a kinyan. It's an interesting tushtel because the reason we gave a lot of different examples, and the common thread of all of them is that the Eved was acting like an Eved. He was being mashamash his rabbi, even without picking him up. So the reason why we're saying if the Eved picks him up is because that's another way for him to serve the rabbi. You wouldn't think it's because of the fact that he's physically lifting him up. So what is a tushtel really to the way the Rashbam learns it to a mat? And that's why the other Rishonim don't learn like this pshat, but then they have to explain. If you say that it's talking about that he improved the land, what's the raya from this altogether? Amr of Yirmiyah Bira, Amr of Yehuda. Yirmiyah Bira said B'Shem Rav Yehuda, Hayman b'shada lifta beipili da'ara, beipili da'ara de ger. Someone who threw a turnip into a crack in the land of a ger. So basically, he's planting a turnip, but he's not doing any kind of work in the field. He's just tossing it in there and letting it do its thing. It's not considered a chazaka, right? If it's a hefkedik land and he says, "Oh, I made a chazaka," it's not a chazaka. My timer. What's the reason? When he throws it in, there's no improvement in the land. It's a potential improvement that someday a turnip will grow out of it and he'll be able to harvest it. Hasta. And hashad the kashavach memela kashavach, and that which it grows later on, it happens on its own. It's not his work. So this Rashbam that I think we should see just because this is a subtle point about because what the Rashbam is going to be addressing is we've been talking about chazaka. The examples of chazaka is no god of a part. You did an improvement in the land. So let's try to say it outside because it's a long Rashbam. The point is, the improvement has to be a direct improvement, that you've made it physically better. It's not that you improved the potential of this karka, that someday you're going to get a turnip out of it. That's something that the ara itself is going to be improving. It's going to require that the turnip take root and grow, and then you harvest it. And again, we're not talking about the type of chazaka that we've talked about of a cheskes shalosh shanim, where you're proving that it's yours. We're talking about the chazaka of kinyan. The chazaka of kinyan needs something very specific. That you improve the land. That's what the Torah refers to when we say you could be kind of kesef shtar and chazaka. And this is not an improvement in the land. This may make the land more valuable, but when we talk about an improvement, we mean that you physically made the land in some way better than it was before. And like we said, even Lagabi, the mansion, even though you built a massive mansion that improved the value by 100%, until you put in the door that you completed an action, that it's a complete binyan, then you haven't got a chazaka. It's the same thing over here. Amar Shmuel, we're going to bring a couple of examples of a similar rule in Shmuel. Haiman de Pashach Dikla, Adaita de Dikla. Someone who pruned I shouldn't say the word proved. He took off branches from a date tree, a date palm. Adaita de Dikla Kani. If he's doing it in order to prune the decal to make it grow better, so that's an improvement in the decal. It's now a better decal. Adaita de Chiyusa. But if he does it because Chivusa, he wants to take the branches and feed it to his animal, like honey, because that's benefiting from the property, which is not a chazaka. Again, that's chesles gimel shanim. That benefiting is a chazaka, but not the chazaka of kinyan. Heichidami. How do we know? We're saying that it depends on what he has in mind. How do we know what he has in mind? So if he took off evenly from all around the decal, adaita de dikla. That's a little harder to do. If he's doing it that way, it's because he wants to prune it. But if he takes it all from what's nearest to him, adaita de chivusa. He's doing it obviously for the fodder. He's not interested in improving the decal. It would be better if it was evenly distributed. The branches he's taking. V'amar Shmuel, a similar thing. Haiman de zachi zicha. Someone who swept the brush from a property. Adaita da'ara kani. If he does it to improve the land, to take away the underbrush so it would be easier to use, then he's kani improve the land. Adaita desivi. But if he's doing it to take away the brush and use it for firewood, then he's not like kani. Then he was nana, but he didn't improve the land. Heichidami. How do you know which is which? Shakal Ravri Vizutri, if he takes all the brush, both the large branches and the small twigs, Adaita Diara. That's in order to improve the land, you have to take everything away. Shakal Ravri Vishavak Zutri, but if he takes the large one and leaves behind the small ones, Adaita Desivi. Obviously, he's doing it to take away firewood, and it's not a chazak. Va'amar Shmuel, Haiman da Askel Tikla, someone who takes away the unevenness of a ground. He flattens the land. Adaita da'arakani, adaita de beidari loikani. If he's doing it to improve the land, he's kind of. If he's doing it just because he needs now, he wants to thresh on this land, and he needs it more even in order to do so. So doesn't make the land more valuable. It's just something that he wants to use temporarily. So it's not improving the land, but he's getting a hano out of it. He's making it into a threshing floor. Then he's not kind of. Heichidami, how do you know what his intentions are? Shakal mulya v'shada benatza. If he takes off the raised portions and he puts that raised dirt that he took off and he places it into the indentations, adaita da'ara, that's considered to be having in mind the land, and therefore it is a chazak. He's improving the land. He wants to make the land straight. Mulya v'natza b'natza. But if he just shaves off the top of the bumps and he makes the hole, fills in the holes a little bit. So, but he doesn't make it fully smooth. Then it's adaita de veidari. That's good enough for threshing, and therefore he's clarifying that that's his only reason for the temporary benefit, and that's not a chazak. V'amar Shmuel, Haiman de pasach maya ba'ara. Someone who put water onto the ground. He had his field, and he allowed water to go onto the land. Adaita da'ara kani. If he's doing it in order to irrigate the land. And again, we had the discussion earlier, Lagabi Cheses Gimel Shanim, And we discussed, we said that if someone does that for 3 years, that's going to be a kinyan. But now we're talking about whether it's an immediate improvement that he can make a kinyan with it. So if he has in mind to improve the land, it's a kinyan. Adaita de kavri. This is something we've seen before. This is a method of fishing where they would flood from water from a river that had fish in it. They'd flood into a field, and then they'd let out the water and have the fish left behind, and they would eat them. So if he would open up the water, he allowed the water onto the field in order to get the fish, like honey, that's just to benefit himself. It's not to benefit the land. Hey Chidami, how do we know which one he has in mind? Pasach trey Bavi, if he made 2 openings, chad mayel v'chad mapik, one to let in the water and the other one to let out the water, adaita de kavri, then he's intending for the fish. Chad Bava, but if he only lets in the water, he lets it soak into the ground, adaita de ara, he's trying to irrigate the ground so it should grow better. There was this woman, the achla dikla betashpicha sleisa shnin. She ate, she used up the branches of a date palm for 13 years by taking off. The Rashbam says she took off the tashpicha, means she took off from one side of the palm tree. She took the branches. Asahu, and then another smart aleck came. Rafik Asahu Gavra, Rafik Tushya Purta. He came and he dug a little bit underneath. He pruned a little bit. He plowed the land underneath the tree, which helps the tree grow a little. He made a small 10-minute improvement in the tree. And this woman had been collecting the branches for 13 years. Also, Kamei de Levi. They came in front. This guy who came after her went to Levi. Amala Kamei de Marok. When some say in front of my book, well, and he gave it to the man who had just worked a little bit in improving the land. Asoi Kotzavcha Kamei. The woman came and started crying. Amala Maya Avalach. What am I supposed to do? Since you only took away from one side, and like we said before, when you take from one side, you're showing that you're not trying to be machzik by pruning, but rather what you're doing is collecting firewood. Collecting firewood is not a chazaka, and therefore this nichsei hager, this dekel tree that belonged to a ger that you were trying to be machzik in, you never did a chazaka in it, and it never belonged to you, and therefore this second guy who made a proper chazaka, he gets it. Amarav, hatzar tzura b'nichsei hager, someone who makes a figure in the nichsei hager. So I think when we had discussed earlier, we talked about someone who made a decoration. Talking about like something like carpet or wallpaper. They made a regular decoration. This is someone who made a specific tzura. So there's no restriction that it has to be. He made a figure, so it doesn't have to be an amma and it doesn't have to be opposite the door. Kana. He's kind. The Rav le kana liginasa the Beirav ela b'tzurasa. Because that's taka how Rav was kinda the garden next to his base medrash, except for making a tzura. That was the way he made a chazaka. So that's obviously a valid chazaka. Itma sada hamasuyemes b'metre, a sada that has borders around it that shows the end of the field. Amrav Huna Amarav. Since he digged one shovelful in that field, so kind of cool. He's kind of the whole thing. He was god of a paratz. He made a small improvement in the field. He's kind of the whole thing. Shmuel disagrees. He says he's only kind of what he did. Meaning that, how do we know what he's trying to be kind of? Maybe when he sticks, Shmuel says when you stick your shovel, all you did was you took a shovel from that field. We don't know what you're trying to be kind of. We don't know what your das is. So all we could do, we say tafasta merubah tafasta. We just look at what you did. You took off this shovel, that's what you're kind of. Masha Enkein Rav says, Rav says, no, it's implicit that you're making chazaka, you mean for the whole entire demarcated field. But if it doesn't have boundaries around it, Amra Papa Keda Azul Tyra the Turi Vahadar. So even according to Rabbi Rav Huna, that says just one shovel full is enough. But that's only if you have borders, so you know that it goes as far as the borders go. What if you don't have borders? So he says what he has to do, the amount as of when you usually have oxen plowing a field, so he has to make a chazakah to fee by having the ox plow the field, plowing it all the way from one end to the other. If he does 2 rows, that's enough to show how much he intended to be kind of. I'll review them as Shmuel. Nichse Ovid Kechavim Harein Kemidbar. You know what? It's 10:07. I'm gonna attend to my family because this is a complicated din of where you kind of with karka with even though you're giving kesef, you're not kind of with kesef, you're kind of with chazaka. So we'll leave that for tomorrow, or not for tomorrow. Hopefully for Monday morning, I think, with fresh heads. Thank you so much.
Correct, Mazel Tov.
I'm not planning on learning tomorrow. I don't think. It's not my intention right now. I think I'm going to be traveling to the mountains early tomorrow morning.
Like attending to the flock. It's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Good luck. Good luck.
We had like 30 people in the house for